Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this very important Heart of Asia conference that was held in Dushanbe, and the foreign minister of the relevant countries were all there, including our own foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab. And interestingly, this is about Afghanistan, since we call the heart of Asia, that is Afghanistan. So peace in that particular country means peace in the region. So this ministerial conference of Heart Asia Istanbul process says that the Heart of Asia Istanbul process was founded on November 2nd, 2011 in Istanbul, Turkey. The Heart of Asia provides a platform for the sincere and results-oriented regional cooperation by placing Afghanistan at its center, in recognition of the fact that the secure and stable Afghanistan is vital to the prosperity of the Heart of Asia region. Further states that the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi addressed the 9th Heart of Asia Istanbul Process Ministerial Conference being held in Tajikistan's capital, Dushanbe. Further says that Pakistan is extending all possible support to Afghanistan. Pakistan is committed $1 billion to its development and reconstruction. And we also opened 5 border crossing points to facilitate bilateral and transit trade, stated by our Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. He further said that no other nation could claim to have such mutable bonds with Afghanistan and thus be more desirous of the peace in Afghanistan than Pakistan. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. Having faced conflict and instability for over 40 years, Afghanistan has never been so close to turning the tide. The progress created so far has indeed created a historic opportunity for the Afghan leadership to achieve a negotiated political settlement. And he further said that we have consistently cautioned against the role of spoilers, both within and outside Afghanistan. We remain deeply concerned about the continuation of violence across Afghanistan. We fear that any space gained by ISIS and Al-Qaeda could accentuate the threat of terrorism, stated by the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. And interestingly, now there are a couple of sound bites we would like you to listen to, stated by the Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. Let's take a listen.
Excellencies, Heart of Asia Istanbul process is an important platform bringing, participating and supporting countries together to advance shared goals of peace, stability and prosperity in Afghanistan. No other nation could claim to have such immutable bonds with Afghanistan and thus more desirous of peace and progress in Afghanistan than Pakistan. Excellencies, as we gather here today, the Afghan peace process stands at a defining juncture. Having faced conflict and instability for over 40 years, Afghanistan has never been so close to turning the tide. In September 2020, we witnessed a gathering of Afghan parties in Doha, which was unthinkable before. The gathering was preceded by another milestone when the US-Taliban peace agreement was signed in February 2020. We have arrived at this stage guided by the conviction that there is no military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. It is imperative that this belief continues to guide the Afghan parties and the international community supporting the aspirations of the Afghan people.
There's another soundbite of Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi regarding the regional trade and prosperity, primarily when we talk about CASA projects or otherwise, and especially talking about the energy projects. Let's take a listen.
We have committed $1 billion for Afghanistan's development and reconstruction. Nearly 500 million have already been spent on infrastructure and capacity building projects. A new visa regime has been instituted to facilitate travel. Despite COVID-19, we opened 5 border crossing points to facilitate bilateral and transit trade. We are engaged with Afghanistan on revision of the transit trade agreement. Pakistan has also operationalized Gwadar Seaport for Afghan transit trade. Pakistan is keen to move forward on regional connectivity and energy projects such as CASA 1000 and TAPI. The Trans-Afghan Railway project connecting Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan is being pursued to promote trade, tourism, and people-to-people exchanges.
And now to talk about it, we have with us on Skype, we've been joined in by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, former Defence Minister. General Saab, thank you very much for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure.
And we also have with us Dr. Aqab Malik, expert on regional and foreign affairs. Dr. Aqab, pleasure to have you in the show as well, sir.
Thank you.
Former Foreign Secretary Tahmina Janjua Sahiba. She's going to join us on the telephone. But let me put the first question to you, General Khalid Lodi Saab. General Saab, I was in fact reading about one of the statements you issued on Facebook, and I went through that, and in which you have shown a lot of concern that the current situation, if not handled wisely, could lead to an absolute problem in Afghanistan. But currently, looking at the overall understanding between the foreign ministers and the kind of approach they have, talking about the common goals, talking about connectivity, talking about trade, talking about peace in Afghanistan, sir, how do you view this? Your take on it?
Crucial time and a very important forum. Crucial time because we all know that the one peace process is just at a stage which is very critical. It can go this way or that way. Everybody is having their fingers crossed and waiting what is the final verdict by US. They have made up their mind. They have given some inclination, but not yet the final verdict. Afghan Taliban have also not come up very openly about their reactions if something happens which will violate the agreement. Although they have shown their concern that it can create problems, and they have indicated that. Such big forums like the Heart of Asia conference, they are good from an angle that everybody which is concerned. We know that there are about 15 members which are the neighbors of Afghanistan, and there are other about 17 facilitators and a lot number of people gathering there. And once our foreign minister was talking about spoilers and those who really want peace, well, all of them were there in that conference. So these conferences are good from the angle that if they want to make any economic pledges for the building of Afghanistan, for the future of Afghanistan, that is good. They will all show great concern about whatever is going on there, about the violence. They will all say that we want peace. That is good. But actually, in my opinion, I don't know. In my opinion, the people, the entities which will really matter as far as the Afghan peace process is concerned, that is America, China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, and the Afghan people. These are, and maybe somebody from Central Asian states. The biggest spoiler will be India, wherever they are in this. This is my assessment. I do not insist on that. So this is what is happening, and I think its significance is a lot because of the timings. But at the same time, I don't think they can really bring about a peace in Afghanistan because at such a large forum, you cannot really resolve such sensitive issues. But a lot depends on what the Biden government decides about about the future of their own troops and the future of NATO troops. In my opinion, the best thing would be that Americans should leave, and they should ask Afghan Taliban to let the NATO troops take some time before they can also leave. That is the only thing which comes to my mind, because if they try to stay back without the approval of, I should say, Afghan Taliban, there can be trouble. Because in my opinion, and I've said that in your earlier programs also, that whatever clauses we have seen of the agreement, some clauses are not known to us, but whatever clauses were made public, according to those, Afghan Taliban have not violated any of the agreement between US and the Afghan Taliban, because if there is any violence going on, that is not, neither Americans are targeting Afghan Taliban nor Afghan Taliban are targeting American troops. So the other things are going on. Of course, there are other angles to that. So I think all said and done, an important forum will not be able to do anything about the peace in Afghanistan. That depends on other factors. But yes, some economic pledges if they make, some financial pledges if they make, it will be important. Thank you.
Now, Jalsa, one quick comment before I move to Dr. Okab. That is about your very, very genuine concern about the ceasefire. And also, you have said that, the deadline, the 1st May, that particular date has a lot of significance. The Americans have very clearly, they've said that it is pretty much impossible to leave within the next month or so, because 1st of May is just around the corner.
No.
Now, the point is, sir, what if there is a delay in the, in the withdrawal of the troops, and at the same time, this spring offensive starts? Do you think this is going to be another problem and a half? Forget about the spoilers who are inside Afghanistan or perhaps outside Afghanistan.
Right.
This particular problem could lead to an absolute, chaos in the country.
This problem, I think, can be resolved because there's an agreement between Afghan Taliban and US. So this agreement, by the consent of both the parties, can be extended, but it cannot be unilateral. If Americans try to enforce it unilaterally or violate it, then I see some, God forbid, some more bloodshed. That will not be good for the region. That will not be good even for America itself. Not good for Afghan Taliban, not good for anyone. So it has to be seen whether whatever extension and stay is sorted by the Americans, whether it is being approved or, let us say, also agreed by Afghan Taliban. If that happens, that will be good. That can happen, and a few more months can be given, and there will be no big turmoil. But if it is one-sided, then that, what I'm saying, is worrying me.
All right. So, Dr. Okab, now, Jalsa has said that any unilateral decision coming from United States of America regarding the withdrawal, if there is a postponement date or something, that is not going to be acceptable to the Taliban. And at the same time, either it has to be a bilateral, or perhaps better would be that it's a multilateral kind of an approach. Now, this important conference that was held today, I think, holds a lot of significance, Dr. Saab. Tell us about the kind of approach now Pakistan has adopted. We have already pledged $1 billion. We talk about trade. We talk about Afghan transit trade. We talk about the bilateral trade between the two countries. We also have sent our commerce minister a few months ago to sort out these issues. And when he came back, he was pretty happy with the whole idea. Now, your take, sir, the kind of role Pakistan is playing seems to be pretty satisfying for the Afghan leadership. Your take?
Well, I think primarily this is not a black and white situation. It is very gray. It's not as if the Americans don't leave on the 1st of May that complete violence will automatically erupt. This has been a negotiation that's taken a long time to get to this point. I think that the Afghan Taliban also recognize the situation that the United States is in at the moment in time. Other contingencies are not in place in Afghanistan when the United States leaves. It's a matter of trust also. So there needs to be further negotiations between them, direct talks. Obviously, that needs to involve Afghanistan government as well. These three parties are fundamentally involved in this. All other external parties could be party to this to an extent, but they're not the decision makers when it comes to the withdrawal of the United States and what happens as far as the Taliban is concerned when they, or if they take part in the future government. That is dependent upon the Afghan government, the Taliban, and obviously the United States and other foreign forces that are there that must leave. There are other options here, though. Other options would include, and nobody's mentioned this for some odd reason, which has been happening since the last 70 years, more or less, is that United Nations neutral peacekeeping forces could be party to this and put into the negotiations, where there are peacekeeping forces from countries that are not party to the previous 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan, that maybe be able to take part in enabling a peace between the parties. And I think that would facilitate trust between the Afghan government, the Taliban, and the United States to an extent. And this is what it's all really about, is the facilitation of trust between all parties. Now, you talk about trade. I think it's very good that Pakistan is going to meet the Afghan government to provide an understanding. They obviously have contacts with the Taliban as to what might happen in the future. But until a recognized future government has coalesced and formed, there's no real say as to what will actually happen in the future as far as trade is concerned. These different power centers will be juggling for different pieces of the pie, as you could say, in Afghanistan, and what they can get out of any future trade with Pakistan or other countries. So I think we've got to in effect, realize that we can talk to the relative parties right now and make space for ourselves, or space for Pakistan, and other countries will no doubt be doing so also, making space for themselves with the different parties. But until a recognized future interim government, or government that is a coalition of these different internal parties in Afghanistan, comes into effect, there's no real guarantee of what would really happen as far as trade is concerned. I understand and do recognize that there are many parties here. Now, you've got the Central Asian countries, you've got a lot of the gas giants, for example, Turkmenistan, and the necessity of energy in Pakistan, needing interaction through Afghanistan and other countries also. But until that government is formed and that government is recognized, and there is some degree of understanding within that party, which may take a few more years, in fact, there is no guarantees of any future trade yet, I don't think. So I think there should be hope, but let's look realistically. And again, it's all gray. It's not black and white. Many compromises can be made by all parties depending on what they want in the future. And I think deals can be made by all parties involved in this particular conflict.
All right. Now, Jalal Saab, another very important area. Since Dr. Kabja spoke about the future government in Afghanistan, that is going to hold the key. Again, Ashraf Ghani has rejected what the Americans wanted. And then, if you remember earlier, Mr. Lloyd, sent a letter in which he talked about a transitional government with, equal participation. Great idea, totally rejected by the Afghan government. If you remember earlier, during the first election of Mr. Ashraf Ghani, Mr. John Kerry had to intervene, and then because nobody was accepting the results of the election, so one was the president, the other one was the CEO. Then Mr. Pompeo came in during the second term. Again, the similar dispute was there. Again, both of them were accommodated. Now, sir, the role of the Americans, was so strong in Afghanistan that whosoever they wanted, they would appoint him. Money was pouring in, at least $5 billion plus needed every year to look after the basics, even the pays of the government and employees, or the forces for that matter. My question to you, sir, is that, let's suppose if certain amount of money starts pouring in from China or Central Asian states or Iran or even Pakistan for that matter to look after the basic affairs in Afghanistan, do you think, sir, the role of the Americans would be diluted to some extent, or as long as their forces are there, they have, the throttle in their hand?
Thank you very much. A very interesting point has been made by Dr. Akab, and that is, bringing neutral forces there under the UN auspices. That can be, I think, explored. But my thinking is that Afghans, they abhor any force, whether neutral or friendly or enemy in their territory. This is what the history tells us. They have never allowed any external force in whatever form. So let us see if that can happen. But anyway, that is a good idea and should be explored. The ground situation in Afghanistan must be understood properly before we can make assessment that what can really happen. The ground situation is that the combined forces of Ashraf Ghani and America and NATO, they have been able to balance out the force of Afghan Taliban. Now, this is the fact on ground, and whereas Afghan Taliban have greater influence as far as the area is concerned, as far as maybe even the people are concerned. So you are talking about the legitimacy of the Ashraf Ghani government. We will not discuss it. So if you take out the US factor, the balance suddenly tips in favor of Afghan Taliban. And so any future dispensation will not be that Afghan Taliban will only be a part of it. Afghan Taliban will be a major part of any future dispensation. That is the ground situation. The other thing is that, as Dr. Akbar was saying, that there are no contingencies after the Americans leave. I don't think so. It is that way. You must have seen that Russia is very active in bringing together Afghan factions. It happened, a few years back also. There were two big meetings, and now very recent also, where they even called Americans. And of course, the Indians were absent, I think, but everybody else was there. Iran, Pakistan, China. So actually, in my opinion, these countries, China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, and of course, factions of Afghanistan, most of them, they will be able to, do something as far as the peace in Afghanistan is concerned. It will not be a situation like it was 20 years back. Americans left, the Russians left, they were defeated, the Americans left, and there was a vacuum. This time, that sort of vacuum will not be there. That is one thing. Secondly, everybody has learned their lessons. Last time the faction they started fighting, they were being abetted by Iranians on one side, the Northern Alliance, and Pakistanis on the other side, the Afghan Taliban. And so there was a problem. Now the Iranians must have learned their lesson, Pakistanis have learned their lessons, even the Afghan Taliban must have learned their lessons. So I don't think the situation will be that grave once the Americans leave. Yes, now the only thing, the main question which you asked, that whether how the Americans are going to influence this area, which they would always like to keep that influence. I think that the answer is in this new warmth which you see between Pakistan and America. Because Americans now want Pakistan because they know that the country which can really play a role, that is Pakistan, and that is why you see all these changes which are happening on the horizon.
All right, sir. We've also been joined in by the former Secretary of the Foreign Affairs, Ma'am Termina Junjua. Assalamu alaikum ji.
Ji, assalamu alaikum.
Ma'am, thank you so much for taking out your time and talking to PTV World, ma'am. Since we are talking about the Afghan peace process in this particular meeting that was held today. Now, ma'am, first of all, your take. Do you believe that everything currently right now is moving in the right direction? Or you see a lot of hindrances and a lot of problems, a lot of obstacles in the coming days, ma'am, as the process goes forward?
Well, obviously, a lot depends on how things work out in the inter-Afghan dialogue that is ongoing. In the Dushanbe conference that you're referring to, the Heart of Asia conference as well, the declaration that's been adopted also refers to and makes a clear support of the process, of the peace process that is ongoing, in the hope that there can be some kind of results coming out of the inter-Afghan dialogue. In reality, of course, on ground, it looks very difficult because things have changed a lot in Afghanistan itself. There are separate demands that are being made by the United States on the Taliban and on the Afghan government, and each one of them has to respond to these. They have responded in some way. But it is going to be a very difficult process. The important thing is that we, as far as Pakistan is concerned, at the Dushanbe meeting, the foreign minister also made a very strong case for supporting the ongoing efforts of peace process and continuation of negotiations between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban. He strongly said, and of course the declaration said it as well, but the foreign minister, our foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, went and strongly supported said that we need to support the Afghan people at this crucial time in their history where we could make peace and where peace could return to Afghanistan for the benefit of the people of Afghanistan first, for the benefit of Pakistan as well, and for the region as a whole.
All right, ma'am, there's another very important point. I mean, when we talk about these stakeholders, we do refer to, obviously, the government of Afghanistan. Then we obviously give a lot of weightage to the Taliban faction. And then, ma'am, there are Uzbeks, there are Tajiks, there are so many other groups, Hazaras for that matter. And then, ma'am, the actual population living in cities, people like us. I mean, are they representing, I mean, this current government is the true reflection of the people and their wishes, ma'am? Or it is all about currently, I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine and, looking after the affairs and the power game that still exists?
Well, for a sustainable peace to take place, it has to take into account the wishes of all the people of Afghanistan and all the various groups. I've seen that in the recent past, the government of Pakistan has not only reached out to the people of to the government of Afghanistan, but to the various factions. I won't say factions, but the various interest groups within Afghanistan as well, in the hope of instilling some encouragement for peace in Afghanistan. It will be a difficult one. After all, it's not been easy. It's more than 30 years of war that's continued to take place in Afghanistan. And it's been very bloody as well. There's been enough bloodshed that has been done, and the people of Afghanistan, firstly, we mustn't forget that the people of Afghanistan themselves want peace in Afghanistan, and that can be a very important push in ensuring that peace does return to Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, it has to be seen whether the government of Afghanistan will also be committed to the peace process, and the Taliban will also, and other factions will also be committed to the peace process in Afghanistan. We mustn't forget at the same time that there are many spoilers in Afghanistan as well who do not want peace to return. And these spoilers are the ones that have to be watched, and that we have to ensure, the international community has to ensure that they do not act as spoilers. There are countries that act as spoilers, there are groups that act as spoilers, and all of these need to be reined in to a great extent. As far as Pakistan is concerned, for us, it's critical to have peace in Afghanistan because we can see, one, of course, it's a neighbor. We have immense cultural, historical, brotherly relations with the people of Afghanistan. And for us, we really feel the pain of the Afghan people. At the same time, we also suffer from terrorism that is undertaken from across the border into Pakistan.
Correct.
And that is something that we need to, for us, for peace to return, it would be important to deal with terrorist groups that attack Pakistani territory and that use Afghan territory to attack Pakistan.
Ma'am, recently there were a couple of very positive developments. I mean, a tweet coming for the health, and primarily another tweet coming from Narendra Modi on the 23rd of March. People really praised that. We all thought that, this is a very good initiative taken by the government of India. Ma'am, but the trust deficit factor is there, was there, and will remain there. Ma'am, the Chinese, they have shown a lot of, positive concern regarding the latest development. They say that the positive interaction that took place between Pakistan and India could also pave way for peace in Afghanistan. Do you think, ma'am, this particular step or whatever we have seen during the last 10, 14 days could reduce that trust deficit to a certain level? And do you believe that these two countries really would work together despite all odds? Because when Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab says that there are spoilers inside Afghanistan and outside, so obviously we all know what he is talking about, ma'am.
Yes, I mean, you refer to the possibility of some kind of talks between India and Pakistan. I would do also, it is true that some effort has been made with regard to the line of control and ending the conflict, so to say, along the ceasefire violations along the line of control with India. But let's not be too convinced of what can come out of it. It's good to be positive, but we have to always remember that relations with India are another story and India will not lose an opportunity to hurt or attack Pakistan, whether itself directly or through Afghanistan. And about the positive steps that have been taken, yes, but we have to see what the situation in Kashmir is. The people of Kashmir continue to suffer at an immensely disproportionate level, and it's something that is a major concern to all
All right, ma'am.
Pakistanis.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. Now, coming back to you, Dr. Okab Malik, now you heard what the former Secretary of Foreign Affairs said. You said there are gray areas. It is going to remain gray. Things are not that clear. Situation is pretty fluid in Afghanistan. But a quick comment, and that is about the overall condition that we see. But ma'am says that, interestingly, for some reason, peace in Afghanistan is also related to the kind of approach Pakistan has in Kashmir. We all know what's going on out there, and that is the actual bone of contention between the two countries. Do you think now situation in Kashmir, if that changes for the betterment of the indigenous people, could be a very positive sign for the peace process in Afghanistan? Or perhaps if it is the other way around, then the situation is going to remain the way it is, or perhaps it is going to get worse? Dr.
Okay,
Okab.
you see, this is where we need to understand that Kashmir is a big issue. There's no doubt about that. The Indians are committing terrible atrocities there. However, we have to divorce the two, and we have to look at the long-term future of Afghanistan here now. We can't link the two in as if there's going to be peace in Afghanistan and Kashmir at the same time. Once you do that, there's going to be a never-ending situation where one tussle and the other will not resolve itself. I think at the end of the day, we have to look at Afghanistan in its own terms, within its own boundaries, and not related to Kashmir at all. You have to look at that side, otherwise we'll be bogged down for another 10, 20 years. That's a reality. The Indians are not going to give up Kashmir. This is something that's, I feel, is a strategic issue for them. If they were to give up their heights in Kashmir, they would give up the water. They're not going to do that. Pakistan needs to come to understand certain issues in this respect. So putting these things together just complicates matters. It's just not worthy of attention in that respect. I think Afghanistan has to be dealt in its own merits, completely on its own. Whatever happens in Afghanistan does have an impact in Kashmir. There's no doubt about that. If there is a certain degree of peace in Afghanistan and Taliban settle down into a form of government, they're held within certain obligations towards the government and maintaining peace and security in the region. So in that respect, they would have to observe certain issues in Kashmir in that respect also. So I think there is interrelated activities here. But when we look at Afghanistan and the peace in Afghanistan, we have to divorce that from all other aspects in relation to Kashmir completely. We can't go into other aspects and other conflicts, and other countries will bring other issues up then. And then that complicates issues, and that brings other forces into play, which will spoil the situation as a result as well. And this is the one thing that we want to avoid. I think that as far as India is concerned, the United States, with its strategic understanding with and arrangement with India, can play a part in this respect also. If they want the peace, there's no doubt the United States wants to get out. Whether that will happen anytime soon is another matter. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. It may happen within a year, but they do want that. And if they want to accomplish that, they have to put some pressure on India in that respect as well, not be a spoiler. I think that could be an affordable way out as far as Pakistan is concerned. In doing so also, we have to recognize that there are many other parties involved here. This is going to be a tussle for power. And let's not kid ourselves. When it comes down to 1992, when the communist government left, literally because it changed sides and gave up its power to Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was at that time Jamaat Islami in the north, the Northern Alliance. That led to the civil war with Gulbuddin. Now, this situation, as the general said, is not going to be the case. However, there are still vested interests by different parties in different countries relative to their ethnic groups and associations, religious associations, for example, as well. That is not going to change. That does exist. Whether that plays out in a violent manner or another depends on the situation on the ground, as he said. Whether the Taliban continue with a spring offensive. They've held off right now, but there's no guarantees. Their spokesman said to the Voice of America just earlier that this is not a ceasefire as far as they're concerned. The spring offensive is not held off yet. This all depends on the United States and how they act. Now, I think this is leeway for negotiation and very intense negotiation between the three parties, and maybe Pakistan and other parties could be involved in this. I think there needs to be an agreement on that. But then they don't have much time. I think they need to have an interim period. I did introduce the idea that the United Nations would be a beneficial outcome in this respect, but that would also take time to put into effect. I don't think anything's really been placed on the ground to look at what would happen if and when the United States leaves. The Afghan government does not want them to leave. There's no doubt about that. They don't want to get into a fight, an intense fight that could fall out into a civil war again with the Taliban. You have to understand that nothing is declared right now. Nothing is guaranteed at this moment in time. Everything is fluid. Until there is a real peace agreement between all the parties, and then that is held up by all the parties, and all the pressures are put into play, there's no guarantees at all. So let's not be wishy-washy as far as this is concerned. There are real stakes involved for the future of this region in Pakistan, Central Asia, Afghanistan, Middle East even, and all the parties are involved. And these parties must play their part. And honestly, with trust, with each other to an extent, to build a certain degree of confidence within each other and the parties involved on the ground in Afghanistan. Given the last 40 years of war, will that happen? You tell me.
Now, General Saab, another very important area, since the foreign minister also talked about the connectivity for collective growth. You talk about Central Asia, we've been hearing about this CASA project, CASA 1000, the gas, the energy corridor, the railway links, the trade and everything. Now, sir, but whatever the potential is, we couldn't capitalize on that, unfortunately. Now, sir, do you believe if the regional countries, they exert pressure on the government of Afghanistan as well as on the Taliban and the concerned, I would say, movers and shakers or the decision makers regarding Afghanistan, and if there is peace, it would lead to progress. Progress would eventually lead to prosperity, and that is what the people want. Do you see this equation getting sorted out, solved, or no, sir? This is just going to be a dream.
I think this time it can actually happen because you have named many countries that also include China and Russia. This time, because one that CPEC can flower much better if we have peace in Afghanistan, and as everybody is saying that peace in Afghanistan is vital for peace in Pakistan and in the region as a whole, and that is why Heart of Asia, this conference is taking place. So this economy is a great magnet to convince people to modify their attitudes. And I think the Afghan Taliban are no exception. So I would say that yes, there is a possibility that if enough incentives are given to the people of Afghanistan, to various warring factions, probably we can hope for peace, and it is not a far-fetched dream as it used to be 20 years away. But I think I agree with Excellency Akab once he says that two things: one, that we cannot directly connect Kashmir and Afghanistan, and secondly, we have to keep in mind the 40-year struggle, which has created very deep schism between various factions within Afghanistan. So a lot of help in terms of economic help, in terms of political help, in terms of allowing parlays and making them sit on the table, that will be required. But as I said earlier, hopefully everybody has learned their lessons. So this time it seems that, to me, according to my assessment, it should be rather easier as compared to the last time, which was nearly impossible. So I will not call it impossible, but yes, difficult it is. There's no doubt in that. But this time, I think the parties, those who want peace, they are more in number, they have more weight as compared to the parties, those who are detractors. So if we look at that balance, probably the things can improve. So let us hope and pray that this conference comes out with some good outcome, and but the parties involved, especially now the Afghan government and Afghan Taliban, they are able to sit with each other. I would like to say one thing about the Afghan government. You see, elections taking external forces were in complete control, or most of the control in Afghanistan, one factor. Secondly, the turnout, 11%, actually, people say that it was even less than 5% or 6%. Okay, whatever. Keep that in mind. The time which Election Commission took to announce the results, I think more than 6 months, if I remember correctly. You can correct me if the time was more. And then, even after that, two claimants coming up that I am going to the president. So that speaks of the legitimacy of the Afghan government. I know that the world at large, they have accepted them as the legitimate government, but look at these factors which I have just narrated. So if Afghan government thinks that their constitution which they made, in my opinion, not being the proper representatives of the entire Afghanistan, that constitution, under that constitution, any future dispensation cannot run. It will not be acceptable to Afghan Taliban. So Afghan government will have to relent as far as the constitution is concerned, as far as this claim is concerned that they are the legitimate, representatives of the people of Afghanistan per se. So unless we know all these things, probably we can go wrong in trying to assess that what is likely to be the future. The physical situation, the moral situation, the political situation, all have to be considered.
I think all these factors really would matter. Now, last quick comment from you, Dr. Okab, and that is about, obviously, as Jal Saab mentioned, that the weightage would matter, which countries are on which side. If there are more countries, seeking for peace in Afghanistan, I think they would overwhelm. But having said that, now, if Afghanistan is also a part of CPEC, sir, that would not suit the Indians. It is not going to be liked by the Americans also. Even Pakistan is under a lot of pressure, if you remember statements coming from the United States regarding CPEC. Now, CPEC could be a game changer for Afghanistan, sir, and for the betterment of Afghanistan, I would say. But do you believe that the Americans would actually do whatever, at the end of the day, would be, sort of capitalized by the Chinese, whether it's CPEC or otherwise, whether it's about connectivity or laying of pipelines or laying down of the railway lines or bridging all the countries?
I think the Chinese are very much aware and looking forward to a certain degree of peace in Afghanistan. They have no doubt made contingent plans as far as what they would like to do. And that depends completely on the situation on the ground. So it's up in the air, really, at this moment in time. However, I do appreciate that CPEC will greatly and immensely benefit from the linkage through Afghanistan into Central Asia. That would give it another avenue out into Central Asia, another way for transit trade to come through the different regions. And I can appreciate that the Chinese, more than anybody else right now, would be willing to put billions of dollars into reconstruction in Afghanistan. I don't doubt that at all. I think they will be the kingpins in the future, and that's whether the Americans allow that or not, or if they have any choice in that whatsoever. I think that if the United States leaves completely, then it's going to be a vacuum where the Chinese will fill that vacuum and the Russians will do so. I don't think in that respect that the Americans would want that. There's a great geostrategic play now with the future world order, and Afghanistan's right in the middle of it. So I don't think the United States are going to completely give up everything. They have massive bases in Afghanistan. They've put billions of dollars into this. They're billions of dollars into shoring up the current government. They're not going to just squander that. So I think it's something that we've got to wait for. Certain degree of peace and uniformity needs to occur in Afghanistan before any real major reconstruction effort takes place. Otherwise, it's money that's wasted. No party wants to put billions of dollars into something that will just blow up. So it's a wait and see, I think, for most parties. And it's the same as far as Pakistan is concerned also. We don't have the funds to put into Afghanistan the same degree of money that other countries may be able to, larger powers like China or America or even Russia. But whatever it is, is going to be significant. And in that respect, Pakistan would also require a certain degree of peace and understanding between all the parties, which may form an interim government within Afghanistan before any real major reconstruction takes place. You have said that, noted that in Afghanistan over the last few years there has been a significant degree of reconstruction, but a lot of that is wasted also because in the south of Afghanistan, that amount of reconstruction has not taken place
All right.
as compared to the north. So we have to look at that and what the parties are going to do. It's in the interest of Taliban to put the weapons down and start negotiating for the future of Afghanistan in a peaceful manner. There's no doubt about that. But that also depends on the willingness of all of the parties to play their part as far as Afghanistan peace is concerned. And that also depends on the tussle between the future of global governance and the global system as far as the Chinese, partly Russia, and especially the United States is concerned, and the Western powers. Unfortunately, Afghanistan's right in the middle of it.
Right. Thank you so much, Okab Malik, for your comments. Jan Sahab, it was a pleasure to have you in the show. And it was great to have Temina Janjua, the former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, to be a part of our show as well. And that's all we have for this hour. But one thing which I have gathered is that as long as Afghanistan is a land for the proxy wars, whether it is between Saudi Arabia and Iran, or Pakistan or India, or China and America perhaps, or the Americans and the Russians, the situation is going to remain fluid, rather very hostile. But if all the stakeholders who are there, especially the local people, I think Afghanistan needs to be freed now. It's enough of the foreign occupation. And that is what exactly is the demand of the Taliban or the government of Afghanistan or any other faction or group inside Afghanistan. And as long as it is used as a proxy place, or for that matter, if it's used against Pakistan by the Indians, things won't remain the same. But we hope and pray things do get better and these negotiations are fruitful and meaningful. That is what matters at the end of the day. War itself is a problem. It cannot be a solution. Anything that happened in the past, whether you talk about the First World War or the Second World War, negotiation was the end product, and that yielded the desired results. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.